Then negotiations began, and some analysts started to see Donald Trump's proposal, Shemuel, as a big trap for Hamas. Right? You know, the clauses of this agreement end up being impossible for Hamas. But there's a detail this time, folks. There was such a big maneuver. Let's see if it holds up, and then I'll ask for your opinion. Do you think that this peace proposal from Donald Trump presented yesterday at the White House with Netanyahu and accepted by Israel, do you think it's viable? Do you think it's really possible for it to happen? Why? In this maneuver, Israel and Arab countries joined forces to pressure Hamas to accept. But there's one thing. When you look at the articles presented there, you think, wow, it's impossible for Hamas to accept this, because it would mean the end of Hamas. Now, who would accept their own end, Shemuel? Can you believe that a terrorist organization would sign an agreement accepting its own end? Personally, I don't believe it, but what would make them do it? So it was a huge maneuver, and you say, no, this agreement is just for show. Why? Because it won't be accepted. It's impossible to implement in practice without Hamas losing out. But that's exactly the objective, to make Hamas lose, while still showing the world that Hamas is being given a chance to leave peacefully. Peacefully? After killing people? And kidnapping Israeli citizens? That time has already passed.
Right? It's a corridor, right? More corridors are being created so the international community can understand, right? That the war continues due to the resistance of the terrorist group. It's not the resistance of the Palestinians. It's the resistance of an armed political group that receives funding from the international community, and they don't want to give up that easy money, that privilege, right? And from the moment that the narrative, as the Brazilian president says, right, a well-constructed narrative, a well-made narrative, you can damage the reputation of the Israeli state as a genocidal country that's committing attacks against 12,000 children, considering that the population of Palestine doesn't have more than 2.5 million civilians. So this corridor is being formed as an escape route for the terrorist group and for the terrorists to surrender their weapons, release the hostages, and no longer have any political involvement, which I don't believe will happen, right? Yeah, I don't believe that this group will be able to stay out of control for very long. Because considering who will take control, right, in the creation of a Palestinian state in the Gaza Strip, if they don't have the firm hand that the Palestinian Authority didn't have, they'll come back to power. Taking over like it happened in the elections where the authority managed to hold on, right? Palestinian Gaza Strip, right? Now, but it's a corridor that's being formed, the statute of Hamas. It doesn't have a firm stance that the Palestinian Authority will return to power. Então, but these are alternatives to get out alive from this siege with Israel, because Israel has its boot on Hamas's neck. What has taken so long? What is taking so long for Israel to eliminate them definitively? It's the Palestinian civilians used as shields by the terrorist group itself and its hostages who are kept in captivity. Yeah, in the Gaza Strip. So once that's dealt with, Israel will go on the offensive.
So here are the main points, right, that can lead to disagreement and rejection. Remember that Hamas is analyzing this proposal with the support of 8 Arab countries. So Israel, 8 Arab countries, Trump, and the United States, but with the support of the European Union. So this is the most important agreement made so far for peace in the Middle East. But it will not benefit Hamas, and that's why it's so important for Israel. Take a look. There are 20 main sticking points for both Israel and Hamas. Is it the perfect agreement? It's not the perfect agreement. Israel would have to leave the Gaza Strip, right? Yeah, it would have to commit in the future to the creation of a Palestinian state, Not now, but in the future. But it's the agreement that has support, the majority's support. And a good agreement, they say, is the one where nobody is completely satisfied with it. But there's balance, there's acceptance. But this agreement in reality is meant to completely put an end to Hamas. And here's the key detail. It has the support of the majority and of the Arab countries. Look at that. The total disarmament and demolition of Hamas's infrastructure, right? The plan demands complete destruction of tunnels and weapon sites, with an absolute commitment that they cannot be rebuilt. This process must be verified by independent external observers, right? In other words, the sovereignty that Hamas has in the Gaza Strip would no longer exist. The infrastructure that it built and would use to attack Israel, not just Hamas, but any other terrorist faction that might emerge in its place, would also be completely destroyed. And that would keep Israel inside the Gaza Strip for quite some time, right? Until that is completely destroyed, you know? Yeah, exclusion from government. Hamas and other terrorist factions are prevented from participating in the transitional governing body, eliminating their political legitimacy. Well, neither Hamas nor any other terrorist faction could be part of a new transitional government in Gaza or any future permanent government in the region. They say that the region would be divided into several kingdoms. Let's put it that way, right? Several emirates, where different families, different clans would govern the Gaza Strip. Well, the deployment of an international force, the immediate presence of a foreign stabilization force, would replace Hamas's security mechanisms, challenging its sovereignty and control. And the immediate release of hostages. The demand for the release of all hostages within 72 hours forces Hamas to instantly give up its most powerful bargaining chip, making it harder for them to negotiate future terms. And that's it. When there are no more hostages in Hamas's hands, it's over. Why? You don't negotiate with terrorists, right? Yeah, when you make deals with terrorists, you're showing that terror pays off, that committing acts of violence, deliberately killing people, gives you space, right? A seat at the negotiating table. And that's unimaginable. Through terror, you manage to gain ground. It's unimaginable, but it's the reality of the Middle East. And up to this point, well, that's the proposal presented by Donald Trump to Hamas. Is it the best proposal for Israel? No, it's not. But why? Because it's not perfect, right? But it's one of the best ever presented. So much so that Netanyahu agreed, right? Israel agreed. Why? Because it has a provision, in case everything goes wrong, that allows Israel to go all the way. And what are the chances of that happening? It's huge. It's almost impossible for Hamas to accept this agreement. And if they accept the agreement, it's because Hamas really has no more hope or ability to keep confronting Israel. That's one of the analyses. And then, Shemuel, what's striking are the countries that support it. Look, these countries and European countries attacked Israel at the UN. See how Netanyahu told the truth at the UN. He said, many who are here attacked us at the podium, but congratulated us behind the scenes, saying that we really needed to do it. And to defeat Hamas, which only brings terror to the world. Many. And then, that backs up what Netanyahu said. Just look at the countries, Shemuel. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, United Arab Emirates, Indonesia, Pakistan, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt, right? They support this peace plan by Donald Trump.
They depend on it, right? Because, and ironically, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, which even positions itself as a channel for these negotiations, for the exit, right? The terrorist group's way out of this siege. They are exactly the countries that never took in Palestinian refugees, right? And they made fun of how Europe rushes to take in Palestinian refugees, Syrians, right, from everywhere, Lebanese, right, who are constantly being received there, as if they understood the region and also the behavior profile of these people who entered Europe. So there is no plan for those countries to take them in. And they need to maintain the rhetoric that they are the ones who are hostile to the response that Israel gives to Hamas inside the Gaza Strip, because they need to control, the groups that could rise up, right? In any popular revolt, they could take advantage and even conspire against these governments. So they maintain that position of condemning Israel's right to defend itself, but they're actually rooting against Hamas. They're rooting for Israel. And the other factor is that Israel is the blockade, right? It blocks Iranian action against Saudi Arabia and Iran's other goals in the Middle East, right? And these groups are manipulated by Iran. So all of them depend on Israel's success to increase their security zone, their comfort, and their enrichment. And then it's an opportunity for all these countries to take over the Gaza Strip and build, right? To build the oasis suggested by Trump and to re-educate a Palestinian population. Then, yes, they will have freedom and liberties and will have prosperity, being governed by these countries considered moderate.
And in this plan, there is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority there to control Gaza, right? The main support, even from Saudi Arabia, was to put all of this in the hands of the Palestinian Authority. Because in the end, the Arabs are always rooting to have some thorn in Israel's side, right? Always. They will never live, I believe. They will never, at least in the world we live in, be 100% in agreement with Israel. They can normalize relations, right? They can buy, sell to Israel, but peace, true peace, friendship, true friendship is difficult. Look at Egypt, right? Egypt has a peace agreement with Israel, but you don't see Egyptians visiting Israel or the other way around, right? Israelis being well received in Egypt, no, that doesn't exist. Jordanians? Not really, right? Lebanese, right? They haven't signed the agreements yet. Syrians haven't signed the agreements either. Saudis haven't signed either. So even with the Abraham Accords, there's still that eternal pain, right? That will remain. Well, look. Yeah, and on the other side, right? The guarantee of humanitarian aid is limited and just enough. It prohibits the displacement of Palestinians from Gaza, and no Arab country wants to receive these Palestinians from Gaza. It guarantees the release of all hostages, establishes a security mechanism that ensures the safety of all parties. It includes a total Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, rebuilds the Gaza Strip, and creates a path to a two-state solution where Gaza is fully integrated, Judea and Samaria under a Palestinian state. This last item here is terrible for Israel, but there's no guarantee that this will actually happen. There are other negotiations going on behind the scenes, right? Look at this. It also includes Egypt, Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey. And Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Indonesia, and Pakistan, right? They are supporting it. In other words, all the countries, the main countries, Arab countries that have influence in the region, Muslim countries, are supporting this Trump plan. And in a broader assessment, this plan is more advantageous for Israel than for Hamas. Well, that's my view, right?
Yeah, and the politics, right? The politics of the terrorist group, right? Which is what happened to Yasser Arafat from the moment he accepted agreements, right? Of being canceled or even killed, right? As it's suspected that he was poisoned, right? By Palestinian agents. Now, the leadership of the Hamas group accepting an agreement that goes against the radicals of their own group, right? That's another factor, right? A reaction that they also fear, right? Because they could be killed by their own supporters, right? if they accept agreements that they see as unfavorable and that benefit the Zionists, right? That's what they fear. It's very important, right? That this action by the American government in the eyes of the international community shows, right? The willingness Israel has always shown to coexist with the Arab states, with the Arab countries, right? And the groups, the Palestinian radicals, have always been this thorn that mainly got used to collecting international money for their war efforts, right? And that hatred fueled ambition, right? Which is about eliminating the state of Israel, which they have not given up on.